Okay, so there is a story circulating around the internet about an incident that occurred in the city of Reyes, I'm not sure how that's pronounced, in northern Bolivia. And apparently, what happened was a man suspected of child murder was dragged from his prison cell and basically lynched in the street. Now, the background to this is that the little girl had been visiting the city for a grandparent's funeral, and she went missing, and there were signs that she had been sexually assaulted and then was brutally murdered. This is obviously one of the most heinous crimes that you can imagine. Child murder. Uh, Child murder on its own would be horrible, but the fact the child was raped before that, it's definitely one of the worst crimes I could think of. And although broadly I'm against the death penalty, that is one crime I think that the death penalty would probably be justified. But this disturbs me, and this is why this suspect had been held in custody. There had been no trial, so this was, he was being held prior to the trial. So there'd been no trial, which meant there was no opportunity to ascertain guilt or innocence. Um, Miscarriages of justice do happen. And I'm not saying that is the case here. I'm not saying this man is innocent or guilty. Clearly, the police must have had something in order to have arrested him. But do not underestimate, again, the police being under pressure to apprehend a suspect, um, disregarding or being too eager to find a suspect. Before evidence is really solid evidence is presented. It's happened before. And again, I'm not saying that's the case here. I'm just saying it has happened before. So, yeah, basically, the man was dragged from his cell by an enraged mob and stripped naked and hung up, and presumably killed. I find that barbaric and I find it very unsettling. But what I find equally unsettling is the fact so many people are so quick to condone it. And I can understand why they do, because the initial crime is so heinous that people are driven by emotion. So they think about the crime, but they don't think, well, so in their mind they're thinking this guy's guilty. They don't know if he's guilty or not. He hasn't been found guilty in a court of law. They're simply jumping to conclusions. And I've noticed this is something that has Bolivia has been in the headlines before for this sort of vigilante justice. It's the poorest country in South America, and you could put it down to education and indigenous justice. Um, but developed countries cannot claim to be totally immune from this. Here in the UK, we had situations about 15 years ago where alleged paedophiles were hounded simply for having the same name as notorious child killers. So I find in cases where people's emotions drive their actions, it is very dangerous. And you'd have to be a robot not to be moved by something like a child murder. Um, I think that is one of the most disgusting, evil crimes possible. And if it was my child, would I want blood? Yeah, I would. Not that I'm a parent, but if I was, I would definitely, I can understand that. But I also think that that sort of vigilante justice is barbaric. Why? Because for all we know, this is an innocent man. There's just no way to know. This could have been someone who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he was arrested because he was, I don't know, maybe a petty thief or something. So the police found him as a convenient sort of suspect. It's not inconceivable. It's not inconceivable. The rule of law has to be one of the governing principles of civilized society. It has to be one of the guiding principles of social structure. Otherwise, you have anarchy. And shame on the people who are automatically condoning this without considering that. Shame on them for being so ignorant and just rushing to say, I mean, I've seen comments like, "Oh, this should be the same thing should be done all over the world." Um, there has to be rule of law because we just don't know whether the man was guilty or innocent. And if he is guilty, I think that would be a case for capital punishment. I'm still not convinced that street justice is the answer, even for heinous crimes, because if you set a precedent, then anything goes, and you're basically condoning anarchy. And I think that's a big problem. Um, so yeah, it's unsettling to watch. There is a video of this, and it's not the first time something like this has happened in Bolivia. To be clear here, this has got nothing to do with being soft on crime. You don't have to be liberal to see what I'm talking about. You can be conservative and see what I'm driving at. There has to be rule of law. So I hope the ringleaders of this mob are arrested and charged with murder because that's what it was. Um, there's no there's no justification for allowing emotions to dictate justice before evidence has even been presented. Now, from what I've read on this case, there wasn't even any evidence linking this suspect to the case. And I cannot emphasize enough, this was a horrible case. Horrible. I hope whoever was guilty for the little girl's murder faces severe punishment. But justice cannot be determined in that way. And I'm not so naive to think that this is something that's going to go anytime soon. All over the world, this is a problem. And whilst it does frequently occur in countries like India and Bolivia and parts of rural Mexico, developed countries are not totally immune to this. Um, so, people might say, oh, well, it's down to education. But like I say, similar things have happened in the UK and the United States. Um, I always think of the scene in the Green Mile where, of course, the main character Kofi is accused of killing two little girls, and that's everyone assumes he's guilty because he's a big giant. Of course, that's just a film, but it does kind of highlight the fact that miscarriage of justice happen. Now, in this case, we're never going to know, and actually, that robs justice from the little girl because, for all his mob knows, the real killer could be out there, and he or she, more likely he, could well have escaped justice because they have targeted this person. Because and the problem is where you have people will justify this by saying, "Oh, but in a court of law, he won't get justice," and that's where I think there has to be proportionate justice. So that's why it's just one reason why I have a big problem with lenient justice because when the courts are excessively lenient, then that directly enables mob justice because people then say, "Oh, but we can't. The courts aren't going to do justice, so leave it up to us." That's why mob rule sets in. At least it's one reason. So let me know your thoughts. I don't care what people say about me. I think it's barbaric, and I do feel unsettled seeing something like that. Um, and no one should think that I have any notion of sympathy with whoever done this evil crime. I think whoever's responsible, I think that would be a death penalty case. But there has to be rule of law. There has to be evidence. There has to be the principle of innocent until proven guilty, in my opinion.